Everybody, today we are talking peptides with Nathalie Nidham. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Darnell Cox. I am a gerontologist and healthy aging coach, also a certified holistic nutrition and health coach. And this channel is all about feeling good, looking good, functioning your best at every stage of life. So today we have a special guest, Nathalie Nidham, who is the host of the Biohacking Superhuman Performance Podcast. So let me see if I can get her on here. There you are. Let's see if I can invite. Show all about peptides, longevity, how we can not only look our best and function our best and feel our best, but spend more time on the planet in a more functional way. Hi, Nathalie, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. How are you, Darnell?
So I'm good. I started and stopped, had to restart because I was having a little bit of an issue with the internet. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we have smooth sailing.
Okay.
So I'm so happy that you're on the show.
Well,
because
thank you for having me.
Are like a big hot topic right now, and we want to get to the bottom of it. Before we do that, though, I want to introduce you. This is Nathalie Nidham, and she is the host of the Biohacking Superhuman Performance Podcast. She is a certified holistic nutritionist and an epigenetic coach with a keen focus on human longevity and health span. You are talking my language, Nathalie. When I first came across your podcast and your Instagram, I'm like, I gotta have her on the show. So let's get to the bottom of it. What the heck is a peptide? Because I know that there are people on here. We're gonna start with the 101, right?
All right. Okay.
I know what they are.
Fair enough.
You explain to me.
Okay. Well, I mean, like a peptide is a protein. It's as simple as that. But it's a very small protein. So it's, generally speaking, we define a peptide as being 50 amino acids or fewer. So amino acids, people might know as, there's supplements you take that have amino acids in them, like branched chain amino acids or essential amino acids. So these are the building blocks of protein. So peptides are made up of a series of amino acids. The proteins in your body can be hundreds and thousands of amino acids long. In the case of peptides, they're 50 amino acids or fewer. And I know that we're going to be talking about the bioregulators as well today. And those are almost like, we could call them a subset of the longer chain peptides. And they're 2 to 4 amino acids long, no more. So they're the tiniest of proteins.
Teeny, teeny, tiny. And for you guys that remember high school biology, amino acids are the building blocks of proteins, right? Like that is like ingrained in my brain from high school. Of amino acids are what makes up proteins, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so how are those different from biomodulators?
Bioregulators. So
bioregulators,
the longer chain. Yeah, so the longer chain peptides they're typically fragments of proteins that are naturally occurring in our bodies. And they typically act by binding through chemical messaging. And so they'll often bind to receptors on the cell membrane and send a message into the cell, and then they'll affect cell behavior and tissue and repair and all that kind of stuff through cascades. They will also have the ability to flip on genes on and off in some cases, but they do that more from a cell signaling perspective, unless you're talking about a particular peptide by the name of GHK copper, which is very, it's becoming much more well known because it's becoming used more and more frequently in skincare because it has really great benefits for skin. But it also has really powerful benefits systemically. Now, the bioregulators, on the other hand, are so small that they can get into the cell, and then they get into the nucleus of the cell. And once they're in the nucleus of the cell, they can bind to very specific binding sites on your DNA, and that way upregulate the production of certain proteins.
Interesting. So it's so fascinating. You guys, science and longevity, it's an ever-moving target. Right? We wouldn't be having these conversations a decade ago.
No.
So, and there's a lot of benefits for using peptides, and there's a lot of things that we're a little bit unsure of, because there's a lot of animal testing, not a lot of human testing. And so what I guess what I want to find out is, in terms of skincare, what are like some of those peptides that are being applied topically? Are they injected? Are we drinking them like a collagen peptide? How are we getting them?
Yeah, so collagen peptides are a completely different category, right? They're more like I think of them more like the bricks and the, you know, they're more like the building materials, if you will. Whereas the peptides we're talking about for skincare, particularly, like for particularly GHK copper, which is the most commonly used peptide in skincare. And there are other peptides that, you know, are kind of like outside my realm of working. I'm usually, when I'm talking about peptides, I'm talking about the repair peptides like BPC 157 or an immune peptide like thymosin alpha 1. But when we're talking about GHK copper, and that's a peptide that was actually discovered by a doctor in the US by the name of Dr. Lauren Pickard in the 1970s. And I think it might even have been in 1973. And it's a really cool peptide because the copper gives it a very vibrant cobalt blue color. But what's amazing about this peptide, and there are some doctors that would call this actually a bioregulator, because it affects over 800 of our own genes. And what it does is it flips them back to a more youthful setting.
Right.
Very, very powerful.
When we're dealing with peptides, aren't they also working on those same pathways that we naturally would have those in our bodies when we are younger? Like that,
for sure.
For example, like in terms of like the injury thing, and this is one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show, selfishly, because I've got a little bit of a rotator cuff tear, not a tear, I wouldn't say that, but I've got like a little click. It's something, you know, I lift heavy. And so I'm always very careful with my alignment with this shoulder. But you just mentioned the BPC 157, which is that peptide that is for, you know, for healing and stuff. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? I want to know everything, but I also want to, because I think people are so quick to jump into surgery. And without really having the knowledge that there are ways that we can utilize these peptides to repair injuries, but also call on our own body to come to the rescue to repair those injuries. And shoulder cuff and shoulder surgery is one of the more common surgeries. When you get older, we get that frozen shoulder. I say we because I'm 56. We're officially in the middle-aged category here, okay?
Well, you know, it's interesting. I mean, our loss of estrogen affects our soft tissue's ability to heal as well. So it's all kind of linked. And you know, BPC 157 is probably, I mean, you know, I'll go back to GHK quickly, because GHK copper, although it's claim to fame as skin, it also is very good at wound healing. And it can be very effective even at healing, at supporting the healing of soft tissue injuries, because it helps with to reduce scarring. It helps to promote healing without scarring. And we know that scar tissue, when we have an injury, the body's going to look to repair it. But sometimes it's not that, you know, it's kind of like the person in the field who doesn't care too much about whether you scar. They just want to close up the wound. And so GHK copper, it kind of takes a little bit more care. It's like, no, we're not just going to fix it. We're not going to slap it together. We're going to make sure everything lines up properly.
Yeah.
But one of the things that you said that's really interesting and very true is our blood serum levels of GHK drop as we age. So we have a lot more in our systems when we're younger, and they go down. BPC 157 is interesting because it's a fragment of a protein that originates in the gut, in the gastric juice in your gut, right? So
you guys, pause for 1 second. I want everybody to kind of like sink that in for a second, right? Because that to me is why I love what I do. I think the human body is absolutely fascinating, and if we can understand it and we know the how and the why, we're way more likely to implement some of these kind of lifestyle hacks, like including peptides and stuff like that. So say that again. The BPC 157. Where does it originate?
It actually originates in your gastric juice, like in the gut. So it's it's pretty. Hang on, I'm just gonna stand up here. It's a very interesting compound, and what's interesting about it is because it originates in the gut, it gets a buy. It can be taken orally, right? It can be administered in a number of different ways. And oral administration of BPC 157 will sometimes help with musculoskeletal issues like you're talking about, like, whether it's tendons and ligaments and muscles, that kind of stuff. But it also is very helpful for wound healing in general. It's used for burns. And it can be compounded into eye drops for eye injuries. It's brain protective. It's pretty versatile. But unfortunately, I think one of the things we should mention early on, and one of the things I need to say actually is, first of all, like, just so you guys know, like, I'm a citizen scientist. I'm not a doctor. So I want to put that out there. And I also want to say that the FDA last fall came out with some new rules around peptides, which really has restricted compounding pharmacy's ability to compound them. So it's become a very uneven terrain in the United States around the injectable peptides. And sadly, a lot of the most commonly used peptides like BPC 157 and GHK copper and thymosin alpha 1, thymosin beta 4, I mean, I know they all sound like crazy names, but all of these compounds were included on that list. And so now they're designated as class 2 compounds. So we're really operating in the gray zones here, right? Now, what they stopped short of doing was classifying oral BPC 157 as a class 2 compound. So I think it's still very much, as far as I know right now, the companies that are making the oral BPC 157 supplements are not having any kinds of issues at this stage. But there's no doubt. Yeah.
So my question is, and I've done a little bit of research, so I know why that they've kind of restricted that. In terms of, like, just, if you're growing something, right, and a lot of the growth hormone kind of peptides, those that affect those kind of pathways, you run the risk of, if you've got something growing in your body that you might not want to be growing, like a tumor, it could increase the chances of growing something that could be malignant.
But there you're referring more to the growth hormone secretagogues. So there's a group of peptides that what they do is they upregulate your body's own production and release of your own growth hormone. So that's those. Where BPC 157, where there's some concern, is because one of the ways that BPC 157 is so powerful at helping to heal tendons and ligaments, which traditionally are, if you have one, right?
Yeah.
It's very hard to heal tendons and ligaments. Why? Because they have very poor blood supply. And one of the mechanisms of action that BPC 157 uses is called angiogenesis, where it will help to build new blood supply to that area of injury. Well, the bad news is that's what a tumor does as well. And so although there's no research that shows that this is the case, nevertheless, there's a concern. Is it possible, if somebody had a tumor, that it could make it worse? And we don't have the answer to that question. Like you said at the beginning, there's not a huge amount yet of human research in that area. And so, you're definitely moving into kind of being ahead of the curve kind of space here. But definitely for oral BPC 157, which is also very, very powerful for gut health, for gut healing. The oral BPC, I have seen it be helpful for people sometimes with like a sore knee, sore back, like they'll be taking it for their gut, and all of a sudden they'll be like, oh, you know what? I've had this sore knee and it doesn't seem to hurt anymore. So it is a very interesting compound. What I would like to say, one other thing I'd like to say, because somebody just left this comment on my feed on Instagram, and it is true that in a small percentage of people, BPC 157 can actually, although, what we know about it says that it helps to balance the dopaminergic, serotonergic, and GABAergic systems of the brain. So it has a balancing effect on neurotransmitters. There is a small portion of people that actually can have quite severe reaction to BPC in terms of anxiety, like all kinds of weird symptoms, like neurological symptoms.
Yeah.
And so for that reason, I think, well, first of all, you have to be cautious. And secondly, you have to be very mindful when you're introducing something like that into your body. You really have to tap into yourself and how you're feeling, because if you wake up the next morning with like severe anxiety that you didn't have the day before and you're not accustomed to having, you have to be open to the possibility that it is this new thing that you've introduced into your body. And what I've seen is the faster you stop, the better off you are.
Totally.
So gritting your teeth and muscling your way through and just continuing to use it is a bad idea. And I do, there's enough people I've heard of now who've had an issue that I think it's worth mentioning so that people understand that it can be. There's way too many people running around saying BPC 157, it originates in the body, it's really good for you, it's body protective compound, it's good for whatever ails you. There's no issues. And I just think awareness is very important to understand that you can have an issue with BPC 157, just like with the growth hormone secretagogues. They're very powerful anti-aging peptides because growth hormone, we know in appropriate amounts, is very anti-aging. It's great for your skin. It helps you to build muscle. It helps to burn fat. It can be helpful for sleep. Like it helps to heal injuries.
And
it's all of these amazing things.
And it declines with age.
And it declines
so that's
with age,
where I think the
stress
longevity
and all the things.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. But growth hormone also can be pro-aging if you have too much of it. So it's all about sweet spots and balances, right? But one of the really interesting stacks that people will use for healing for helping to speed up the healing of something like a shoulder injury is they might use BPC 157 with the growth hormone secretagogue. And the reason for that is because one of the other things that BPC 157 does is it upregulates the expression of growth hormone receptors. So that means that you've got more catcher's mitts looking for growth hormone. And if at the same time you're upregulating your production of growth hormone, then it's going to make it easier, hopefully, for your body to resolve whatever's going on, assuming that you're also addressing any biomechanical imbalances that you have, right? So if something's out of whack, you want to be rebalancing. Yeah. You want to be rebalancing the muscular. You want to be doing the stretches, doing the whatever movement therapy you're doing to help to address the mechanical issues, and then making sure that your body has enough protein and essential amino acids and building blocks to do the repair work, and the collagen, and your vitamin C is going to be great for collagen or silicon, all of these different supplements. And then you've got these two agents, if you will, that'll help to upregulate the pathways of repair in the system.
And they have what the FDA did then was they took away the ability to inject BPC 157. You can only take it orally. Is there a difference in the efficacy of that when you're injecting it versus taking it orally?
Yeah, I would say that injection is the most efficient way to go, and it's most effective for musculoskeletal. But it's worth a shot using the oral. If you've never used it before, I have a friend. Like I have a friend whose dad used BPC 157 oral recently and called her up and said, "Holy moly, this stuff is magic. It's unbelievable. Like I can get out of my chair and my back doesn't hurt anymore. I'm going back to the gym." So we have people, I like to call them high responders. Because there are people, it's like their body's just waiting. Just throw me a bone. Just give me anything that I can to help me to heal.
Maybe that's me. Just throw me a bone. I just need a bone. Yeah. I've been nursing this shoulder because I won't have surgery on it, because it comes and it goes. It gets better sometimes when I really nurse it, but I never want to stop lifting weights. I'll give it a rest, and I'll work around it, because when you have an injury, yes, you need to rest that portion, but you don't rest your whole body, you guys. You got to keep moving. You got to keep the muscle mass, because that will affect everything. Everything from mood to sleep, hormonal imbalance, metabolism, all of that is like so interconnected. So even though I've had this recurring shoulder injury and I do not want to get surgery on it, I've been thinking about, and I have done one other time, injecting a PRP in it. But when I started researching this BPC 157, I thought, oh my God, that would be ideal.
Yeah.
To just get a shot of that.
Yeah. Well,
when you ingest it orally, like just like how it originates in our gut, it just naturally knows where to find our injuries. Is that right, Nathalie?
Well, essentially, I think what happens is that it upregulates these pathways systemically, right? So, and the body's really smart in terms of chemical messaging and, you know, areas of inflammation, kind of like waving the flag going over here, we need help over here kind of thing.
You guys, so that's what we do with microneedling, right? We're waving, for those of you who follow me, and I microneedle usually once a week, a different body part, but that's what we're doing. When we're creating those micro traumas, we're waving that flag for the body to come to the rescue, right? So when we're ingesting something like this, like a BPC 157, our body is, our injury is already waving that flag.
Yeah.
And then the peptide tries to find it.
If you microneedle, you definitely might want to get your hands on some GHK copper serum. Okay. Because that would be the way to use the GHK copper, would be to microneedle with it.
And you would just topically put it on top of the microneedling?
So what I do is I use, I don't know if you've seen these Cure skincare little microneedling devices. It's a little stamp. So I'll put a few pumps of my GHK copper in there and I'll just stamp away.
Okay. I might try to add that to my microneedling protocol as a post care.
Yeah. And you can also put it on afterwards, but and as you know, anything you do, like if you're disrupting the stratus corneum, you're disrupting that barrier, anything you can get in there and you take the opportunity to get in there, I think is going to be beneficial. But definitely with GHK copper, you're going to get way better results.
I want to just clarify, you guys, as long as you're not putting in an active like a retinoid or a vitamin C or something that would irritate the skin, because there are people that microneedle with like a retinoid. That is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a peptide that actually helps with healing. So that's very, very, very different. So to be able to put in a copper peptide that would help with healing is different than trying to microneedle with your favorite serum that's helping address your wrinkles. Very, very, very different.
Well, and the GHK copper actually helps with collagen and elastin production. So it's, I think it would be synergistic with a lot of the serums you're probably already using.
I'd like to know the brand that you're using of the GHK copper peptide.
Sure. I use, the company I use is called Vitali, V-I-T, like vital with an I at the end.
Okay.
I actually just released a podcast with them, I want to say last Friday. And so it's all about their products, all about the GHK copper serum and GHK copper peptide in general. And we recorded cast both with the co-founder of the company and the medical advisor that they have on board. And so if people are interested, that would be a really great place to learn, you know, to get a bit more deep knowledge about what it is and what it does and how it works. But, you know, to go back to your shoulder, that there's a stack that people like to call the Wolverine stack, where they would, back in the day when we were using, you know, when we're using a lot of injectables, people would combine the BPC 157 with another peptide called thymosin beta 4. That is another very powerful healing peptide, and the growth hormone secretagogues, like they might use, and again, forgive the nomenclature here, these are all research chemicals, right? So because they're research chemicals, they haven't been given names, really. Yeah. And so the growth hormone secretagogues would be the CGC1295 and ipamorelin. So that combination, because you have two growth hormone secretagogues that kind of work, there you go.
Just because the names are so complicated, this was like an outline that I did in terms of like just my knowledge and things that I was looking at. And so when you look at the growth hormones, you see the CGC1295. And I thought when I saw that, I'm like, can somebody just give it a different name that we...
Yeah, I know.
Right?
Well, it will. I suspect that we, over time, we'll see these peptides come to us from pharma companies as medications, just like the GLP-1 agonists have come from pharma companies, where they've taken, you know, those are essentially peptides from the human body that they've modified them so that they have a longer, I was going to say shelf life, they have a longer half-life in the body, so a longer window of activation.
And what Nathalie is talking about, you guys, is the Wegovy and those, you know, that
the Mounjaro
peptide that's in the Wegovy and the Ozempic weight loss shots, which I've done a lot of different live shows about that as well. So it's so fascinating. And so the one that you just did on the copper peptides, I just want to remind everybody, Nathalie's on the Biohacking Superhuman Performance podcast. Where can we find that before we move on to another thing?
So you can find it on any of the podcast platforms. So if you use iTunes or Apple Podcasts, you can find it there. If you're on Spotify, you can find it there. If you go to my website, natnidham.com, there's a tab for podcasts. You can find all the podcasts there. So it's wherever you look.
I was listening this morning, and I just found it I found it so fascinating, and you're so good on that podcast, and it is in your category. I think you're in the top 50 podcasts. So I urge you guys to check her out, because she knows what she's talking about.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so let's get into some of these growth hormone peptides. And wait, somebody said, can you get over this? Can you get over the counter for copper peptides for craft's sake? Thanks for craft's sake for that question. Can you get this over the counter for copper peptides?
So for the skincare, you absolutely can, right? So if you go to, I think it's Vitali. I can't remember if the website is Vitali. It might be just vitali.com. But if you go to my website, if you go to Nat Nidham and you go to Nat Recommends, and there's beauty under there, if you go there, and not only will there be a link to the product, but there'll also be a link to the podcast I've recorded on that topic. So,
I love that.
So that way it's just easy. It's easier than scrolling through 230 episodes of the podcast looking for whatever you're looking for.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's talk about some of the growth hormone peptides, and how did the recent FDA ruling, how did that affect any of those? What are some of the benefits, and what are some of the real dangers in being on some of those?
So really those peptides are essentially off limits as far as the FDA is concerned. They don't want people to use them right now. Good. They feel that they're not well researched enough. And so, but what they do, and so the goods, right, is that, as we talked about earlier, in someone where growth hormone levels are dropping because of, whether it's because of age or illness or stress or any of the factors that really poor sleep, like all of these things will tank our growth hormone levels.
It's so, everything is, the more that I learn about the human body, the longer I'm doing this, the more I realize, like, there is not one thing that you do in your life that does not affect the whole system in some way. I kind of think of it like a waterbed, right? You can't sit on the end of a waterbed. I don't care how motion sensitive it is. You can't sit on the end of remember, guys, in the 80s when we had waterbeds? But you can't sit on the end of a waterbed and have it.
You can't move a finger.
You can't move at all without it affecting other parts of the bed. And the human body is very much like that. So with these growth hormones, and I'm so glad you said that, and I knew you were going to, or else I wouldn't have had you on here. But if I wouldn't have known the answer that you were going to give to this about the growth hormones, I really wouldn't have had you on here. There's very few people where I've had to say, wait a second, I don't agree with what you're saying. But they're off limits, and there's so many reasons why. Yeah. And when they first started coming out, just intuitively, my thought was, that's going to really that's going to really mess up your own body's ability to produce growth hormone.
So that is not, so this is the thing. This is why growth hormone secretagogues are so amazing. Okay. And that is, it's different than, so when you go and if you're able to source synthetic growth hormone that's been, even if it's bioidentical, right? So if you're introducing growth hormone exogenously from outside into the body, if you introduce it at too high a level, it will shut down your body's growth hormone production, because we have negative feedback loop on growth hormone, because the body's smart. It's like, we can't have too much of this stuff because things are going to start all over the place. If you've ever heard of acromegaly, right? This is a genetic condition where people's growth hormone levels are out of control. And so these people, their forehead starts to grow, like they have massive issues, right? So the magic of the growth hormone secretagogue is it doesn't prevent that negative feedback loop. What it does is it sends a signal to the brain and says, hey, we need more growth hormone. And sends a signal to the pituitary gland, hey, you need to release more of that growth hormone. But it doesn't prevent the negative feedback loop. So you can cross the line. Like if you use too much of these growth hormone secretagogues, the first thing you'll notice is that you have swelling, you have edema, you start retaining water.
Yeah.
Right?
Interesting.
And joint pain.
Which is kind of an indication of doing on a lot of different levels that something is going on with your body. If your body is inflamed, you got to step back and take notice of what has just changed. Because
100%.
Because in long term, like you said earlier, if you power through this stuff, I'm going to power through the negative side effects of this, and I'm just going to power through. Then your body is already giving you the flag saying, hey, this is not, it's a red flag. Something else. This is not good for me. It's causing inflammation in the body. We have to be really tuned into that. But I've seen people when these growth hormones first started coming out, people in my field that were overusing them. And I've never been on them because I always had that fear, like I want the dust to settle on the science a little bit. You know?
Sure.
I don't want to be, and sometimes I'm the first to try something and I'll try it once. And I've done that with a lot of different things in terms of like stuff like lasers and things like that come out. And diets and whatever, like supplements. I'll try something once, sit back and see how my body reacts. And then I'm going to do a deep dive into like, what is going on here? But I do know that there were a lot of people in the beginning that were abusing that. And what I noticed was a difference in the jaw, in the head. Like I would work with a client who, and I would never name names, but I worked with a client who was on growth hormone and wanted to have bigger muscles and wanted to have better metabolism, wanted, all the things that we have when we're younger. And I was trying to tell her, like, you can do that with lifestyle hacks. We don't need to like start adding this stuff in. But what I noticed was a difference in bone structure that was happening. So
so you wouldn't typically see that with the the peptides. You would see that with growth hormone supplementation. The peptides won't. I just don't. I haven't seen that with the peptides because your body will react before you get to that point. So the dark side of the peptides, or the growth hormone secretagogues, is that, so it's that edema, the joint pain, and also some people can have an allergic reaction to them. So they can cause a histamine reaction. So that'll show up at the injection site sometimes it'll show up just like a little itchy mosquito bite. Sometimes it'll be a big hard red lump. Sometimes it could be hives. So again, you have to be mindful. Like this category of peptide can be, I've seen it do really good things for people, but it has to be treated with respect.
Oh my God, what is wrong with people? I'm gonna invite back Nathalie. That is so disturbing. I think somebody else's Instagram, and that was so you guys, how disturbing was that? What is wrong with people? I just don't understand. Let me see if I can get our guest back. How crazy is that? I think what happened is somebody's hacked in to somebody else's Instagram, and I know that person. And when I invited them on, I know them very well, Mona. And when I invited them on, some weird, I don't even know what to call him. A streaker. That was interesting. Woo! That was like, what the heck is going on? That was so weird. Linda, how crazy was that? I'm trying to see if I can get our guest back on, but she says she's unable to join. I'm gonna let me see if I can get her back on. Oh my God, that was wild. That how crazy
that was hilarious.
Was that?
Oh my God.
For those of you who are just coming on, I'm sweating over here. All of a sudden I'm like, excuse me. I've never jumped off a live so quickly in my entire life. Okay, so for those of you who are just coming on, Nathalie, I apologize. So I think what happened, let me get my composure. For those of you just joining, why we are so flustered is because as we're in the middle of our live show talking about peptides, right? And longevity and the benefits of all of those and epigenetics, there was a request sent from somebody who I know very well, Mona, Beauty by Mona. I know her very well. Obviously, so she kept sending, and then she sent a text saying, I would like to get on. When I went to go put her on, I think somebody had somehow hacked into something.
Hacked her account somehow.
Because they hacked her account, and all of a sudden we saw the side of, there was like, I have interesting questions to ask, and I know her, and she's done platelet-rich plasma on me, and so I know her well. She's a registered nurse. So I thought, oh, this is safe. So I put her on, and we see the side of the bed, and we don't see anything. I thought, oh, I wonder if she just walked away not knowing. And then all of a sudden, a naked man. You guys, come on. What makes you think that's actually like abusive? Nobody's asking to see your penis. What makes you think people want to see that? Wrong channel. Read the room. That was like, that was bizarre. Okay, so I'm probably going to have to, instead of posting this to my main site, which I normally would do.
You might have to have it edited.
I think what I'm going to have to do, I think that's what we're going to do. I think I'm going to save that one. I'm going to save this one. Instead of me posting it right away, I'm going to edit it, cut out the penis, and we'll edit it, and we can even add captions. So Linda Lake says maybe he's looking for some growth hormone. LOL. Certainly
seemed to be fine on the growth hormone front.
I was gonna say,
oh my God,
you know,
that was epic. I don't know what makes people do these things. That's hilarious.
I guess if you want that stage, you're pretty proud of what you're revealing to people. And yeah, it didn't look like he needed any growth hormone, but that said, super inappropriate. And now I know. Somebody said I missed it. Well, I'm sorry, I can't repost that because it literally was somebody's ass and then their penis. Not good for peptides, but I apologize. So now I know, Nathalie, I will never, that's the first time I thought like, oh, you know, I know this person. People request all the time, but I know this person really well. I'm gonna have to call Mona after this.
Her account's been hacked.
Oh my God.
By the giant penis.
Her account's been hacked for sure. Oh, Vitali Skincare. That's what we were just talking about, you, for the copper peptides. I would love to try it out. If you can contact me after this, I'd love to talk more about that. I want to see about how that would interact with microneedling.
The serum
for healing.
For microneedling, I think I know is fantastic. And it's one of the cleanest. It's a very, very clean line. So she's got in there the GHK copper peptide. If you get the medical grade, it's 3%, which is as high as you want to go. And then they've got a brown algae that actually protects the skin from DNA damage, from radiation, all that kind of stuff. And then I think the third main ingredient is squalene oil, which is very hydrating. And it might be hyaluronic acid in there too. So it's a really nice blend. And they recommend microneedling with it as well. So
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. I can't wait to try. So Vitaly Skincare, I'm going to contact you afterwards. Because I do on Sundays, I normally do, I'm here every Saturday and Sunday at noon. And on Sundays is normally a demo. So I will literally microneedle in front of like a whole crowd, and explain the science behind biohacking your skin. Because if you can do that, if we're working to trick our bodies into behaving younger through like building muscle and through all of these various things, our skin can be hacked as well by creating those micro traumas, right? And then making sure that we have all of those good ingredients to heal faster. So I'd love to try that. So I'm going to get in touch with you afterwards. Oh my gosh. Okay. I don't even know where we left off, but
so we were talking about growth hormone secretagogues. We talked about the good and the bad of growth hormones, growth hormone in general, why growth hormone secretagogues. I mean, again, like we're talking in a landscape right now where the FDA has expressed, is definitely trying to discourage people from using these products. But we did talk about the difference between a growth hormone secretagogue, which upregulates your own body to produce your own growth hormone, which is very different than.
And that's what I wanted people to really grab that. I'm sorry for interrupting, but I want people to really grab that. It's helping your own body to produce. Yes. So that's what you mean by upregulate.
It's like doing sauna. Like sauna regulates your production of growth hormone the same. Lifting heavy weights is fasting. Like there's lots of lifestyle things you can do to upregulate your production of growth hormone. Even things like Katsu bands, which are these variable blood flow restriction bands, they upregulate your natural production of growth hormone. So, but what this does is it actually sends a message to the brain that gives the pituitary gland this message: make us some more. We need more. And it's particularly useful when people are injured, and certainly as for older people who are making less growth hormone as a rule.
And I think that was my fear early on, is like, I was afraid that my pituitary gland would get lazy.
Right. But this won't cause that. I don't think that that's the concern. The concern right now is more, there's another camp of people that says, look, things change in the body as we age, and maybe there's a reason for that, right? Maybe we don't want to be as anabolic when we're older because there's more DNA damage. And so if we're willy-nilly sending out signals to build, but we have more damaged DNA, maybe we're playing with fire. And so these are questions we don't have all the answers to, right? And this is why very often people come to me to talk about peptides, and they want to use them, and they want to use them for anti-aging. And I'm like, like I'm in the peptide space. I think I'm one of the more conservative people. Like I think that if people who have injuries, in certain cases, there's a really good argument to be made for bringing these compounds on board to assist the body in doing what the body does, right? I think there's a huge argument for that. But I also think that we have to be mindful that we don't have all the answers. And so it's like the BPC 157, in I would say 90% of people is a positive. There's a small percentage of people that for some reason they have really negative cognitive effects, like they get very anxious or angry, and so it prevents, like they get I'm trying to remember, there's a term for when you don't care about other people all of a sudden. So you have to be, and you said it earlier, like if you're going to be using compounds like this, you have to be very tuned in to yourself and notice, like, how do I feel? Am I more tired? Do I have more energy? Am I anxious? Am I swollen? Like what is happening in my body that ever since I introduced something new to it? And we need to do this for everything anyway, but particularly with peptides because they're so powerful.
I actually did that, kind of the same, but I actually did that when it came to eliminating alcohol from my life. Because I really thought, and I did like a whole 6 weeks thing where I really noted my mood on a scale of 1 to 10, noted my resilience when I woke up in the morning, noticed how strong I felt in a workout, noticing how I slept, noticing like how was, did I have anxiety? Did I feel like more stressed out? And I noted across a lot of different things, my weight, everything, because I was one of those people that I could metabolize everything in my life was like spot on health wise. So I thought, oh, that's okay. I like my cocktails. It's like my one thing. Some people eat a bag of Doritos. I like my cocktails. It's like, whatever. But but that said, I really kind of started looking at how does, like, I took a baseline before I made a change. I took a baseline. And I think when you're dealing with something like peptides as well, I think it's important to take a baseline for a week and really on multiple different levels, like how much am I anxious? How do I feel in terms of my mood stability? How is my weight? How is my sleep? How is, like, am I reaching for processed foods? How are my cravings? And all of that stuff. And then how is my skin? Because skin is your largest organ. And so what you're doing to your insides, I can tell when I work with a client, I'm not a magician, but I can kind of see when some people come with me for skincare, I'll oftentimes say, how are you eating? How are you sleeping? What's going on with your stress? Because all of that shows through the skin, which is what we talked about earlier about everything being connected. So I would suggest if somebody is really interested in getting on and doing some of these things, you've got an injured shoulder and you're interested in some of these peptides, to really do a baseline on multiple different factors, characteristics of what's going on with you. That way, when something goes a little awry, you already know.
You're on it right away.
You can't explain it away by, right away. Get off of them right away, right? And always be with the doctor's care.
Well, at the very least, a practitioner. Definitely someone. Have a coach or a guide. Like, have someone who's another set of eyes, another set of ears, because sometimes we can explain away a lot on our own, and we need that other person. Excuse me. Excuse me. Thank you.
Ooh,
Sorry
God
about that.
bless you. God bless you. Yeah, and I think that's also the reason for the baseline too, because we could accidentally, think, oh, I had a bad day at work, or I had something, and therefore I'm a little bit more moody. When in all actuality, it could be because you introduced a peptide that is causing that. So we have a tendency to explain away our behavior, especially if it's bad behavior. We had a really bad
and if we really want something to work, right? We're really excited about saying, and I mean, I've had people who have just been really sad about stepping away from something like BPC, because they're like, well, it was really helping on the one hand, but on the other hand, it was making me nuts. And it's, the making you nuts part is not worth it. It just isn't. So, and for the people who ignore it, it can take a long time to come back to balance. So it's not to be, like I said, it's not the vast majority of people don't have issues, but for that small percentage who do, it can be really a problem. So let's just be mindful.
Yeah, be mindful. Okay, is there anything else that you want to add besides? My God, I still can't get over the streaker.
The streaker was impressive.
Streaker on the show.
So I mean, look, there's a lot to be unpacked in this space. I mean, the bioregulators are their own category, and they are, like I said earlier, they're very small. They get into the nucleus of the cell, they bind to DNA, and they upregulate the regeneration of tissues, glands, and organs at a cellular level. So I refer to them more as restoring the tread on your tires as the tires wear down, right? And so what their goal is really to restore balance to the body. And what's interesting about them is that you have 21 different bioregulators, and each one comes from and impacts particular tissues and glands and organs in the body. So for example, we have a bioregulator for the pineal gland, which regulates circadian rhythm, melatonin production. It is really the master endocrine regulator of the body. We have another bioregulator for the blood vessels. So it helps to restore function and integrity to the lining, the endothelium of blood vessels, both at a macro and a micro level, which helps to provide nutrients.
And are those really, are those, so those are not peptides that are doing
they are
that. Those
peptides,
are,
but they're
they are, yeah.
bioregulator peptides. So they're even tinier. The interesting thing about these is they're available as nutritional supplements, right? So they can be taken as capsules. They have been, synthetic versions of them have been synthesized in labs. And so they can be introduced either as sublingual drops or by subcutaneous injection. But they're also just available as in capsules. But the capsules have been extracted from, typically the capsules are product that's been extracted from tissues, glands, and organs of animals. So they tend to be a bit of a problem for anybody who's vegan, obviously. But we're also starting to see in capsules now the synthetic bioregulators that people are encapsulating. And so, you know, they're an interesting.
What are the more important, what are the more popular ones?
So the most
that have to do with longevity? What are the more popular ones?
I always call them, I talk about my desert island list, if you will. So if I could only have one, it would probably be the pineal gland bioregulator. And if I got a second one, I would probably go for the thymus gland bioregulator, because that's your immune system, right? The thymus gland is the seat of your immunity. Yeah. And if I got a number 3, then it would be the blood vessel, right? Because if I can have good circulation, a good immune system, circadian rhythm, regulation, melatonin production, which is a very important antioxidant in the body, quite apart from the sleep thing, and something that helps my hormones as a whole to try and kind of balance out. Plus, it helps to activate telomerase, which keeps your telomeres healthy. Epidolon, which is the name of the pineal gland bioregulator, also has anti-tumor effects. And I've got that thymus. So I'm pretty good right now, right? I'm pretty happy. So if I got a fourth, you know, probably I'd throw the liver one in at this point, because we know that the liver is in charge of, well, it regulates your blood lipids. It's important for blood sugar, but it's also very important for detoxification of the body. So we want to take care of our liver. So that's number 4. And so then you said, okay, Nat, one more. You can have another one. And I'm like, geez, you know, I got to pick between the heart and the kidneys. Well, you know, there's also one called Cartilax, which is the cartilage bioregulator. And I think that one's pretty cool because it upregulates the production of collagen and elastin. So that's important for our skin. But it's also important for our heart and our kidneys and our blood vessels. Like everything in the body that has to contract and expand is going to be dependent on collagen and elastin production. So I'll probably throw Cartilax in there next. And so, I mean, you know, and I can keep going. It's a little bit like a mom with lots and lots of kids, and somebody puts her up against the wall and goes, okay, name your favorite child. And she's like, yeah, I can't do that. They're really all important. I mean, I don't know. So
I love that. So, and you're taking all of these typically as supplements.
Yeah, I mean, I cycle through them fairly regularly, and and you know, because of my age, I feel like it's something that I need to be doing on a more regular basis. If I was 30 or 35, maybe not so much. You know, I might do, if I was 30 or 35, I might do 30 days of the pineal gland and the thymus gland bioregulator once or twice a year and call it a day. And then, you know, kind of see how things progress as you get older. But, or tap into certain, you know, like in my case, you know, there's a lot of type 2 diabetes in my family. There's a lot of blood pressure issues. So there's a lot of kidneys. So I might lean into the pancreas, the liver, the kidney, there's bladder one, you know, like I might lean into those a little bit more, but I'm also going to always stay on top of these other ones because they're so foundationally important. But, you know, the bioregulators have to be, and one thing about even the other peptides we were talking about before, but also the bioregulators, everything has to be run in cycles. There's none of these things should be taken kind of chronically all the time. As much as we think that if a little bit is good, then more is better, we all have to understand that what the body really responds to is pulses, right? It's like you're giving a pulse with the microneedling. You're doing that once a week. You're not doing it every day, right? You're creating a micro injury, giving the body time to heal, and then going again.
I love that you said that. I love that you said that because I have a whole calendar. I have a whole calendar, and it's very much like you said, like you don't, otherwise you exhaust the skin. You can't just like there's a, you know, too much is too much. There's no such thing as like, just, you know, the more the better. It doesn't work that way. And it doesn't work that way with the skin either. If you microneedled your face every week, you're not going to create the most healthy skin. So it's the same with those. You have to cycle them.
100%.
I love that.
So, you know, and so they have to be pulsed, right? And so, because what you're doing, you're giving the body a signal. You're saying, hey, let's do some repair work on the pancreas. Well, so we're giving that signal. Well, now we have to back off and let the body do its thing. And then maybe if we have a problem with the pancreas, we might come back next month and do another 10 days. And we still have some, well, we might come back again and again and again. And then we notice that all of a sudden our CGM is showing us that our blood sugar control is a little bit better, because we've also been working on our diet. We've also been working on our sleep and our exercise and all the other things. Now we've got all the cogs in the wheel kind of coming together, and we've now at a cellular level given some help to the body to help to rejuvenate and refresh itself. And now we can see the magic kind of happening.
I love it. I think that is a great place to end. And we're right at 1 o'clock. There's a part of me that wants to like just post this last part and then re-edit and put it all together. But it might be kind of funny because we started talking about
I think you're just going to have to go back and put the whole thing back together again.
I think that's true. I think that's true. Okay, Nathalie, tell everybody where we can find you again, and we'll get off of here. And I just thank you so much. But let's make sure everybody knows where to find your podcast, what it's called, how to join your newsletter, all of that.
So the podcast for now is called the Biohacking Superhuman Performance Podcast. We're just in the process of a name change. So it's going to be the Longevity Podcast with Nat Nidham in the next couple of weeks. So we're rebranding and repositioning it. Nothing about the content's that's what the content's been all along anyway. My website, which is where you can find out, you can sign up for my newsletter. You can also find the podcast there. You can also find all the different, like if there's a particular area you're interested in, you can go to Nat Recommends, find that section, and there'll be a link to podcasts with products and all the different things. And that's all at natnidham.com. And at the top of the page, there's a red bar to join the newsletter, and you can do that there as well. And then I have a private membership community where I just finished a live Q&A with them right before hopping on with you, where I do live Q&As, and that's the BSP community. And you find that on the website also. So everything's on the website.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I will get this edited and posted hopefully by today.
Now,
I don't know.
Whenever is right.
I might send you the unedited version.
I love it.
All right, everybody. I'll see you guys here tomorrow. I think I'll be microneedling my stomach. I'll try to get a hold of some of those copper peptides to see if I can add that in. Thank you so much. You guys look for this to be edited and posted to my site. I'll add you as a collaborator, Nat, if you'd like to put it on your site once we get the streaker out of there. Okay, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Darnell. Great to meet you.